gentlemen, Miss Diana Dors.
I think most people feel that they can relate to me as a human being, which is the most important thing in the world. Whereas when I was a celluloid sex symbol, I was well known, but I wasn't as popular as I am today.
That was the Diana Dors everyone knew. Warm, loyal, courageous, universally loved by her friends and her fans. But behind the image she projected was a complicated and unusual woman.
To describe Dors, you say Dors. You know, Dors was a phenomenon. She was a force. She was a great personality.
She was the type of woman, or even girl, that when she walked into a pub or a restaurant, people would turn around and look at her. Not because she was particularly beautiful, because she wasn't. But she had that magical personality that attracted people. And thereby, I think she had the star quality. I wasn't surprised she became a star.
What a day this is, huh? Just in time in the cold weather. But I want to tell you, this is real beautiful, Diana.
When Diana became a character actress and she put on all that weight, you could say, oh, how are you going to cast her as an Earth Mother? But an Earth Mother wearing French knickers.
An accident. A quick accident, my love. And you are going to help me. How are you listening?
Dorsey knew who she was, and I don't think she liked Diana Dors very much.
But most people did like her, although, interestingly, several key figures in her life, for whatever reasons of their own, declined our invitation to appear on this programme. So if I were a painter, I'd say this is an unfinished portrait. But even with some of the colours and textures missing, I think it contains its own truth. And if you stand back from the canvas, it's a compelling portrait of an extraordinary woman who reflected the decade she inhabited, rather like a cheap but cheerful Woolworths mirror. Diana Mary Fluck was born in Swindon on October the 23rd, 1931. Her background was comfortably middle class, and she was brought up in suffocating respectability. She once told the good people of Swindon to go jump in their own railway yard. Some of them are still in there, smouldering with a resentment undiminished by her death in 1984. Diana was Hollywood-struck. When she was about 9, she wrote in a school essay, I am going, and note the going, I am going to be a film star with a cream telephone and a swimming pool. She won 3rd prize in a beauty competition when she was 13, and then, magically, the Holy Grail came to Britain, when even Swindon was invaded by American GIs. Diana went to the Saturday night dances, where Gary Cooper and Cary Grant sound-alikes taught her to jitterbug, and were only too eager to believe that she was 17.
Well, I can't see anything in it myself. No glamour.
At drama school, just after the war, she got her first film part in The Shop at Sly Corner. She was still only 14.
Archie said that picture meant everything to somebody. And he got it for nothing. Can you beat him?
The name Diana Fluck is still enshrined in a handful of splendid old jokes, but in the 1940s it was clear that it would have to be changed, particularly as she was soon to be picked up and packaged by the straight-laced rank organisation.
How much longer will Archie be?
Archie? He never says. He just tells me if anyone drops in, try and entertain them. Well, I'm trying.
Holiday Camp in 1947 was a doddle for the newly born Diana Dors. All those nights jitterbugging at the Bradfield Hall in Swindon paid off unexpectedly. J. Arthur Rank had a notion to train young screen actors, and he formed the Company of Youth. This was immediately dubbed the Rank Charm School, with its faintly ridiculous images of young ladies and gentlemen balancing books on their heads and talking the genteel rank speak of the period. Diana was enrolled, and among her fellow students was Pete Murray.
One of the things that worried me was that they were doing this sort of cheesecake stuff with her, and I always felt that Diana Dors had a lot more to offer than just being a pin-up in one of the tabloid newspapers. There was a lot more to her. I mean, she was a very earthy girl and became a very earthy woman, and a very good actress, a very underrated actress, I think.
Come in. Did you want me?
Yes, I did. In future, all the time you're in my house, you're on your own smalls, you understand?
It's okay by me. They don't take long, Uncle.
And don't call me Uncle. Otherwise I might forget myself and behave as though I was.
The little girl in the doorway wasn't much younger than the precocious Diana, but 20 years might have separated them.
I was terribly envious of her, of course. And there she was, glamour, you see. Everything that I wanted to be and could never be and have never been. And there she was, you know, sort of, you know, trying to escape from her dress and, you know, looking absolutely marvellous. I thought she was divine, yeah. They wanted somebody very glamorous, and she seemed to be, you know, she fitted into that slot. We were all being pigeonholed anyway, you know. I was the little girl, she was the glamour girl, you know. And I thought she handled it very well, but I think there were times when it must have been very tricky for her, because she was very young.
In 1948, her part in Oliver Twist got her a £10 a week contract with Rank.
Come up and sit by the fire, Noah, dear. Oliver, shut that door behind Mr. Noah's back. I saved a nice bit of bacon from the master's breakfast for you, Noah, dear. Oliver, here's your tea, and take them bits. And make haste, because they want you to mind shop.
A very young Anthony Newley was also in Oliver Twist, memorable as the Artful Dodger. He was soon to be the first important man in Diana's life. When still both in their teens, they became lovers.
My relationship with Dors was fairly infantile. Lovely, but infantile. I worshipped her, but I didn't really think I could cope, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm sure many men will know what I mean.
Did she seem to be older than you?
In 100 years, yes. Dors had the quality of seeming to be much older than her years. I mean, even when she was 16, she was a fully developed woman, it seemed to me, with the humour of a woman. Dors loved men, and men felt easy in Diana's company. I don't think they ever felt they couldn't say anything. And yet she always seemed to me to be a lady. But she, who could possibly have had any man, chose thugs and criminals. And I always found that strange. But
Did you have any sense of this when you knew her?
yes, unfortunately I did, because I came up against it. One of her lovers became very angry at me one night and broke into my apartment and punched me in the eye. A very wonderful shot, actually. Then, you know, kind of unfair because I'd just got up. But so the kind of man she was then going with was very apparent to me, and from then on it got worse. You know, Dors became dangerous to know, Tony. She mixed with a very I don't know what to call it, very strange group, subterranean group. And I personally couldn't handle that. She did like excitement. And it became obvious that the kind of guys she were moving with were also liked excitement, but it was a little bit too...
When you say what sort of guys?
Well, as I've said before, they were... I mean, I'm not telling tales out of school. You know the kind of men, you know the kind of person that Hamilton was. I would say that, I mean, it's not for me to say they were criminals, but they did sail close to the wind. And my contact with them once brought me very close to doing the same kind of thing. And I think that scared me. She was outrageous. But then, of course, when you're that young, outrage is everything. I mean, that's wonderful. I mean, young people today, lust for outrage, and Dors had it in spades.
But in what way was she outrageous?
Well, I mean, her clothing. She dressed to show her body to advantage. She was, of course, the sex queen of English movies, which is a fairly large statement, I suppose, and to be accepted as such as a statement. She was outrageous in her... I mean, when Dors came into a room, she had arrived. I mean, there was nobody else there. Those qualities are the qualities of somebody who wants to be noticed, obviously. And her private life, of course, was fairly open. She never tried to hide it, as far as I remember. So, I mean, she was a very outgoing person.
New Lear was replaced by Michael Caban Waterfield, nicknamed Dandy Kim. Someone who knows Michael well is Samantha Egger, because they were brought up together almost as brother and sister.
He was a playboy. He was with all the most beautiful women in the world. He was engaged to Barbara Hutton. He was engaged... I mean, I don't know the list of the women that he was engaged to, but he attracted everyone that was anyone that was beautiful and wealthy, non-wealthy. They all seemed to want to be in his company.
Because we know that Diana enjoyed the company of colourful people, and also people who sailed a little near the wind, shall we say. Was Michael one of those?
Oh, yes. Totally, yes.
How close to the wind did he sail?
Well, I'm not prepared to go into that. I mean, I'm sure if you just look at the newspapers, you'll see his life history was dubious sometimes, shall we say.
Enter Svengali, a young man called Dennis Hamilton Gittins, who dropped his last name almost as swiftly as Diana had abandoned Fluck. With their marriage, Diana was 19, a significant pattern was beginning to emerge because, a few honourable exceptions aside, throughout her life, Diana tended to fall in love with charming rogues or men who made her laugh. Dennis was both. Mr. and Mrs. Dors, Dennis loved to be called Mr. Dors, now had a riverside mansion here at Maidenhead to go with the roles, and they were doing very nicely. But they weren't anything like as rich as Dennis let on. Politicians, however, were as gullible as the press, and in the drably envious 50s, questions were asked in the House about their life of Riley. The taxman, in fact, came to visit and salivated at the opulence of their tiger-skin rugs, which had, in truth, been bought by Dennis in a junk shop for £2.10. Puritanical austerity Britain disapproved, but not Diana's fans, who saw through all the humbug. Like the men in her life, Diana made her fans laugh.
And look who's put his initials on it. O'Reilly.
Oh, really?
O'Reilly.
Really?
He would.
Well, what are we going to do about it?
I think I can fix it. You leave everything to me.
Oh, I'd always leave everything to you, Paula.
I'm going to go and see the adjutant.
Paula, I was thinking if Private P, if he goes away overseas, perhaps you may get chilly at nights. And
what are you trying to suggest?
Nothing. I was just saying that you could have my best blanket.
Well, that's very kind of you.
Not at all. One of my regulations.
Well, I'm going to go and get this job done.
Shall I come with you?
No, don't bother.
Oh, it's quite all right. Come in.
What?
Dennis Hamilton fancied himself as a property tycoon, but his real talent lay in the jerry-built career of his wife. He constructed Dors like a high-rise block of flats, impressive but inevitably scheduled for demolition. He was also obsessed with sex. The more inventively deviant, the better. And there were stories of wild parties, two-way mirrors, and altogether more juicily prurient material than the news of the world could handle in a year. Among the partygoers was director J. Lee Thompson.
He would ask you to go to a party there, and you'd find yourself alone in the room with somebody else. And he would be obviously watching every move and listening to everything you did. Very weird, odd things. Dennis.
Were you ever caught literally or metaphorically with your trousers down?
No, never, because I knew Dennis, and I knew all about his bugging and about his two-way mirrors, and which she entered into it a lot, too.
Now, that's interesting, because some people say she just stood aside as a disinterested bystander.
not so?
Now I have to be careful here. I can't remember her, say, the other side of the two-way mirror. I can't see. No, I don't know. She always seemed to have a good time, too, let me put it like that.
Not Diana. She was making the cocoa. She was Cynthia Payne, if you like. She was, everyone might be at it like knives. She'd be beaming and saying, "Are you hungry?" I mean, it wasn't that she didn't join in the spirit of things and enjoy it. As long as everyone else was having a good time, she was having a good time. But she remained, she remained innocent. If that sounds strange, I don't know how to explain it.
I'm not certain that Diana Dors was a very sexy girl in the sense that that it's popularly known. I think there were certain things expected of Diana because she looked the way she did. But I'm not certain that she was a particularly libidinous young woman. I think that she perhaps had a little tendency to self-parody, and I think that may have led her to do things or be accused of doing things that she may not actually have done. But I should also say that at that period in the 50s, London and our group, the young theatrical group, was a pretty morally lax crowd. Sexual mores really had more in common with the way we'd behaved during the war, when things became much more casual. Sexual relationships were much more casually accepted than they were in the immediately pre-war days, in which the mores had been fixed, as it were. And in the 50s, we all were pretty loose, I have to tell you. There were all kinds of stories about group sex, and it wasn't at all uncommon for 7 or 8 people to go to somebody's apartment and all take their clothes off. I mean, I don't know that anything terribly sinister happened when they took their clothes off. You know the way English people are. But they certainly talked about it a lot, and there was nothing particularly unusual about the concept of group sex or perhaps even observing people having sex.
Bob Monkhouse was one of the men who made Diana laugh. In the 50s, he wrote and appeared with her in a popular radio series. Monkhouse adored Diana, and 30 years later still believes that if they'd married, it would have been a perfect match. As it was, their brief affair was almost literally nipped in the bud.
Actually, to a certain extent, that was ended by Dennis, who I went to a party at Larry Adler's house in St. John's Wood, Hampstead, in that area. And when I went in, a friend of mine came to the door and said, "Dennis Hamilton's here, is going to kill you." And I said, "Oh, well, that sounds like a rotten party to me." I mean, that's a game I don't like. And I went out into the front garden, dragging my companion with me, saying, "I really have to go, I'm going to be ill." And she went back in the house for some reason, and I was standing there in the dark, and Dennis stepped out of the bushes, and said, "I've got a razor here." Oof. And I, with a tremendous show of courage, which I have never lacked, started screaming. I thought that was the best way to frighten him off. But a knee-jerk reaction, literally. My knee went up, and I kneed Dennis in a tender spot. He keeled over in the bush from which he had previously stepped, and was sick. And I took off into the night. I hoofed it all the way back to the other side of St. John's Wood and further.
In 1955, Diana's career improved when she starred in Carol Reed's film A Kid for Two Farthings. It was also later to interest RKO.
You can either have it in bird's eye maple or in sycamore, with or without the bedside cover.
Yeah, but I can't think about it just now.
Mabel got it in Spanish mahogany, but I don't think I fancy that myself.
These muscles I got here are not right for wrestling.
This pink bedspread I don't like. Do you like the bedspread?
From wrestling, I can lose the muscles I already got.
At least, Sammy, you can look. I mean, why can't you just look?
Ah, good day, madam. You're back again. That's right. Now take your time. Choosing a bedroom suite is a serious business. Go on.
Waiting to greet the party was a glamorous favorite of the fans, Diana Dors.
Dennis had discovered in himself a remarkable flair for publicity. And when Diana attended the Venice Film Festival, instead of flying in with the other rank stars, she arrived in a powder blue Cadillac, upstaging everyone. The Italian press were all over her. and her mink bikini became a newspaper classic. But more importantly, she was now to make what was probably the best film of her career, Yield to the Night, the year 1956.
Many well-known actresses wanted to play it, but I felt that Diana could do it. And she played it straight, a little hard, and she became extremely moving. It was a wonderful performance.
Footsteps.
Keep still, please.
Footsteps. It's the governor. I know her footsteps.
Good morning, Doctor. I hope I'm not interrupting.
No, I'm finished, thank you. Just finished.
Good morning, Hilton. I hope you had a restful night. Is there anything you want? No? Well, there's some books and magazines for you in the post this morning. You'll get them after lunch. Here's your cigarette ration, Hilton. Beats me how you can smoke this brand. They make me cough.
She was not, these in the days that I knew her, she was not really willing to become a serious actress and to reject a lot of stuff which didn't do her justice. She wanted to keep working, God knows we all do, and she wanted a good time, lots of laughs, lots of fun, and she never really got back to finding a part as good as the one in Yield to the Night.
To the Film Festival of Cannes on the French
But when Yield to the Night was chosen as the British entry at Cannes, Diana was still dreaming of international stardom. And as she looked out from her hotel balcony at the fairy tale lights, she said, "This is my night. Whatever happens to me in the future, no one can ever take it away." But they would try.
Arriving at Pinewood, Bob Hope had a glorious eyeful of surprise. Diana Dors, no less. And what a day to meet. Diana had an enormous Raphael tuck valentine for the man with the biggest blog capacity in the world. As it's leap year, she could take the initiative.
I just can't think of anybody else I'd rather give my valentine to, other than Bing, but you.
Well, oh, Bradwell, I'm glad you... What a day this is, huh? Just in time in the cold weather. But I want to tell you, this is so pretty. Is this a valentine?
Yes, it's all in red satin.
Looks like Liberace's underwear. It's really very, very beautiful.
I was amazed how good she was. I mean, I'm talking about doing a routine with me on the, you know, not doing a solid show or anything, but doing a spot with me on television where you just walk in and go. She just astounded me with her talent because the way she could handle lines and feed you. She reminded me of a female Crosby, you know.
Really? As good as that?
No, she was that good. Right.
I'm going to be a film star with a swimming pool and a cream telephone. And in 1956, that dream came true. Earlier that year, Diana Dors had appeared in a Bob Hope television show, and as a result, she and Dennis went to America to dip a toe in the Hollywood water. In fact, Diana jumped in with both feet because RKO offered her a 3-picture deal, and immediately she was picked up and packaged as Britain's answer to Marilyn Monroe. Diana came to an America whose president was a real-life war hero, and to a Hollywood where the most unlikely fairy stories might come true. After all, a film star had just become a real-life princess, although creatures of fantasy like Monroe could never be flesh and blood. Reality, in fact, was a commodity in short supply. Appearance was everything. Hollywood was a small town with a small town code of morality, sexual morality in particular. At 21, Presley had just made his first Hollywood film, Love Me Tender, but his potent sexuality had to be sanitized. In private life, the occasional maverick might seem to get away with it, but big names who behaved like real people had to obey the 11th commandment, thou shalt not be found out. You might be just good friends, or something more, but some secrets, if they'd been revealed, would have meant total ruin. And this was the Hollywood Diana Dors came to in 1956. William Dozier was the producer who handled her American film career.
I had seen her in a little movie called A Kid for Two Farthings, and I thought she was remarkable. I thought she was willing to just be herself. It was done without makeup, and she was really kind of a drudge in it, and was very talented, I thought. And I thought if we can combine that with her obvious attractiveness, we might have somebody.
However, Dennis's flair for publicity cut very little ice with Americans. Big houses round here are commonplace, and theirs was just another expensive home. And when he made use of the setting to drum up publicity, it all went disastrously wrong.
She sent telegrams to everybody she knew and people she didn't know, just everybody she thought she should know or would like to know. And she sent telegrams saying, please come to a ding-dong for Raymond on Sunday, whatever date it was at the time. And Raymond turned out to be her hairdresser. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a party for a hairdresser, but to make it sound like the second coming, you know, was a bit much for the Hollywood people to accept.
Columnists and photographers mingled with the stars, and Dennis was enjoying being Mr. Dors, when suddenly an agency photographer, hungry for an exclusive, pushed him and Diana into the pool. Dennis scrambled out and proceeded to batter the photographer into unconsciousness. All the stars, fearful of the bad publicity, fled to their waiting chauffeurs. Dennis then compounded his folly by telling anybody who would listen or was left that he'd once been a boxer. The following day, newspaper headlines, typical of which was, Diana, go home and take Mr. Dors with you. Back home was where Dennis's charm had always worked. Los Angeles saw him differently, and he certainly didn't charm Hollywood high society.
He was a very calculating, very acquisitive fellow, and not beyond any form of chicanery that would occur to him, and very preoccupied with sex, and the seamier the better. One time we went on a day's cruise on somebody's boat. I don't even remember now whose boat it was. And toward mid-afternoon, people were tired, and there were several people who were in staterooms having a rest, you know. Well, he spent the whole afternoon crawling around the deck, looking in the window, in the portholes, into the various rooms to see what was going on and how it was going on, and would give reports to anybody who would listen on what he had just observed and the mechanics of it and how it seemed to be coming along and so on and so forth. That's all he cared about. And it was really kind of diseased, I thought. He was not a nice man, and I don't think she respected him very much. If she did, she wouldn't have had an affair with Rod Steiger right under his nose.
You remember when we first met, I told you that I was no good and that I'd been in trouble?
I remember you told me a lot of things, and I remember
She met Steiger in 1957 when she made her second Hollywood film, The Unholy Wife, which, like the first, sank without critical trace. During this hymn to the banal, Diana and Steiger were confronted by a gossip columnist, the appalling Luella Parsons, arch-rival of Hedda Hopper and self-appointed guardian of Hollywood morality. Diana had told Luella that her marriage was intact, but when Dennis flew back to England, she barely tried to disguise her feelings for Steiger. Luella Parsons wasn't angry about that. She was furious that Diana had lied to her about her marriage. Diana and Dennis, when he flew back, were piously advised to go to confession, but not in church. They were to confess their sins to Luella Parsons. And I'm sorry I lied, Luella, she said, but I was foolish to fall in love with Rod Steiger and only tried to save my marriage by covering up the problems that Dennis and I were having. As you can see, we are now happily reconciled, and we both beg your forgiveness. Well, Diana and Dennis were granted absolution, on condition that if their marriage ran into difficulties again, Luella and not Hedda would get the story. 3 Hail Marys and an exclusive. But the writing was on the studio wall. Hollywood was not to be Diana's oyster, partly because RKO didn't handle her properly, partly because of Dennis. As for her private life, which was anything but private, by the time Diana returned to England, Hamilton was on the way out, Steiger had already bowed out, and coming in was a down-and-coming comedian called Dickie Dawson, who proposed marriage while they were appearing in Cabaret together. Dawson's origins were a little obscure.
I don't know where he came from, somewhere. I always thought Manchester, but I think he came from Hertfordshire or somewhere like that.
Real name was Colin M.
That's right, yeah. Well, I can remember Dickie in those days hanging around the West End with an American accent. I mean, if you said hello to Dickie, he always said hi. And he was that kind of character.
Totally unexpectedly, for he was still a young man, Dennis Hamilton died. It was a shock to everyone who knew him, and a very nasty shock to a great many ladies, including Diana, when later it became the best-known secret in Mayfair that he died of tertiary syphilis. William Dozier wasn't far out when he called Dennis Hamilton's sexual preoccupations diseased. In a whirlwind 8 weeks, Diana had been an estranged wife, a widow, and now married again to Dickie Dawson. She was soon to be a mother, and would bear Dickie 2 sons, Mark and Gary. The 60s had not yet swung, Profumo and Christine Keeler were not even on the horizon, so Diana's news of the world exaggerations about her life with Dennis Hamilton, which she wrote only to pay off the taxman, shocked a gullible Archbishop of Canterbury. Believing every word of his Sunday breakfast newspaper, he stood tall in the pulpit and denounced Diana Dors as a wayward hussy. Baroness Stocks, in a cold sweat of moral fever, had already charitably suggested that Mrs. Dawson's unborn child ought to be adopted. Wayward Diana ignored both cleric and baroness. But the Dors-Dawson marriage was already in trouble.
Dickie changed right after the marriage, and he became this person that was very sullen and morose, and he'd disappear for days, and she wouldn't see him. Well, Diana liked excitement in her life, and it wasn't coming from Dickie anymore, so she sought it elsewhere.
Home movies and happy families in Los Angeles, where the Dawsons now lived. But Diana was away from home a good deal, appearing in more and more cabaret. In her autobiography, she says that she needed the money to keep her loved ones in comfort.
I remember the times that she would leave, it would just be, it would be painful. One wouldn't want her to go. I mean, I'd try everything to get her to stay. This is embarrassing. I shouldn't say these things, but things that I do, like take all of her makeup, and I flushed it down the toilet because I didn't want her to go, and I figured if I got rid of her makeup, she wouldn't leave. Her jewelry, I took all of her gold jewelry and diamonds and everything, and I chucked them in the bushes out back. I was 3 years old. I guess that was my way of saying, stay. And I remember they had, it was a search for hours. They're going through the ivy looking for these rings, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of jewelry. But I had no idea. I just knew that she took it with her, and without that, she wouldn't be able to leave. So it was sort of, crying out for, please stay. That type of...
Did your mother know that's why you were doing it?
Oh, yeah. Sure. But, she had to work, and she had her other things. I don't know, I feel that her, she made good money, and I think she could have worked a little less than she did. And, she had other people in her life. She wasn't really getting on with my father at the time, and there were other men that she spent time with. And later in life, that was, something that I had spoke to her about, why were they more important than your family? But, that's life. I mean, that's how it goes.
What she didn't see was that she had hurt them and rejected them when they were small, and now she couldn't accept the rejection that they were giving her. So it was a very sad situation, the fact she had to be gone to make the money. But then, of course, the time she fell in love with somebody else, and I guess 2 kids hanging on to her would have been a drag for her. So sometimes she did put her own personal life above the life of her children.
I found out about the divorce by reading it in the paper, went over to a friend's house about 7 years old, and there was a little thing in the LA Times. Diana Dors, Richard Dawson divorced, you know, and I came back and I asked, is this true? You know, and he said, well, yes, and sat down and explained everything. And it really wasn't a shock because, as I said, they were really never together as long as I have a conscious memory of it.
Diana was always the journalist's friend, good for a quote, or, as she frequently claimed, a misquote.
You know, it's kind of hard because it's family. You know, you get into a quarrel with your son or your wife or your mom or whatever, and that's just, it may be the neighbors down the block hear it, you know, and say, oh, they had a terrible row. But, you know, that would happen with us, and it would somehow would always get to the papers, you know, and I would say, how did that happen? Oh, well, someone called me and I was upset, so I told them this and that, you know. Well, why do you do that? You know, you shouldn't. I don't know, there's a line between the public image and the private image, and there's some things, family things, I think, should be personal. At least some things, anyway.
Ever since Dennis Hamilton, Diana had enjoyed practical jokes, some of which, it has to be said, were quite cruel.
It frightened the life out of me. I was seeing a young lady at the time, and they sent a man to my apartment who said he was a policeman. He was a detective. And he said that he had a complaint from the girl's parents and really put 20 years in my life. And then I showed him to the door, and I looked out the window, and I saw the car, and I saw them all falling about with laughter. Yes, that's exactly the kind of thing they did. And I haven't even thought about that for 40 years, 35 years. Yes, there is a streak of cruelty in that kind of behavior.
There was a dark side of Diana, too, where she liked to cause trouble. So that was the Diana I used to get angry at sometimes. But, you know, you had to laugh at her because she was funny. If I had not forgiven Diana for some of the things she'd done, then our friendship wouldn't have gone on for so long.
Over the years, Dors had many lovers, and her unfortunate taste in men continued to be an astonishment to her friends. But one requirement was always apparent.
Some of the guys to whom she was attracted had this kind of nerve-wracking way, but you didn't know which way the cat was going to jump with them. Tommy Eardye was about the most easygoing of all her beaux.
And he bored her.
Yes. That was the problem, I think. I think Diana, for all the sweetness of her nature and her warmth and impulsive, generous way, had a low threshold of boredom.
Her entertainment was the underworld. Not that she was involved in anything. She just liked to, I don't know, sort of like look on the outside through the window looking in. You know, it was a couple of things I remember. One, the last time we were over when we did a This Is Your Life thing, a big bouquet of flowers arrived and, you know, some Christmas cards and things, and she's reading it out loud and saying, you know, Merry Christmas and, you know, Happy New Year, you know, all these just wonderful things, and, you know, and thank Mark and Gary for the David Cassidy photo, and, you know, I'm saying, well, who's that from? And she said, Ronnie and Reggie Cray, you know, lovely lads to send me this, you know, and I'm going, well, wait a minute, you know, these are right villains, you know, and she's saying, but, you know, that was her entertainment.
Diana Dors, the perennial blonde bombshell, marries actor Alan Lake just 6 weeks after she first met him. Diana is 37, Alan 9 years younger.
Alan was marvellously frightening man. I mean, he was frightening in a marvelous way. Very exciting to be with him. I always found him tremendously thrilling company because he could lose his temper like that, or he could burst into helpless laughter with equal speed. And he was alive all the time.
Diana's third child, Jason, was only 15 when his mother died and his father shot himself. 4 years later, he seems mercifully to have come to terms with the tragedy.
He was a lot of fun, you know. He just like to party a lot, you know. Used to do a lot of fun things together.
Yeah. So you've got good memories of him?
Yeah, very good memories.
Yeah. Do you ever see his films?
The films that he's done? Not here, no. There was one thing, I think, I'm trying to remember what it was over here. I think it was like a Juliet Bravo or something that came over. It's kind of funny. Yeah. You don't expect to see something like that over here in American TV.
What was he like as a dad? I mean, was he very strict with you?
No, he was very easygoing, very easygoing. Yeah. You didn't have to be home at any certain time. I could stay out with friends and stuff. It was great.
Yeah, but Mark says he was almost like, one of you.
I know, he was more like a friend than a father, It's better like that, I think.
Jason was around a lot of stuff he shouldn't have seen. He grew up much too fast. He would see his father come home, or he'd open the back door and his father would be lying there with his face in the dirt, having crawled from the pub the night before. He was an absolute Jekyll and Hyde. There was an Alan that was so wonderful, and Diana used to say to me during his wonderful times, you see why I'm with him. I mean, he would be just the sweetest person in the world. But there was this other Alan that used to take over with drinks or with drugs or drink. It was like the devil. Diana and Gary made a video of him when he was in one of these spells. And Alan sat down and he watched this video and he went, it's terrifying. He said, I know where the guy's coming from, but I wouldn't want to meet him.
In her later years, the Dors' figure changed dramatically, most of it due to her illnesses, first meningitis and then cancer. But her courage was enormous, and her reaction to the onset of cancer was a defiant...
Oh, bubbles to you then.
Diana's career was a switchback of heady peaks and stomach-heaving troughs. At its lowest point, she was reduced to performing to drunken soldiers in Germany and to cold-eyed audiences on the club circuit. But in 1972, she made a professional recovery as a fine character actress, helped by her old friend Lionel Jeffries.
It's taking too long, Mr. Wickens.
Getting fatter, not thinner. Fatter, Wickens. Can you hear me, you ugly lump? Because I'm a-talking to you. Wickens, can you hear me? Good. I'm talking to you.
You didn't get no cold.
Why? Why? There was a bloomin' hurricane blowing through here the other night. They should be wasting away with a cold in their bones. Aren't you interested in cash, you great lump? Cash?
At the press show, I promise you this is absolutely true. She came on with the mop cap on and the wart, and it said, Mrs. Wickens, Diana Dors. And I guarantee there were 60 hard-bitten journalists who went, I don't bloody believe it. Di Dors? That was Dors?
Meanwhile, Alan Lake's drinking problem got him involved in a pub brawl.
An altercation took place, and the outcome of it was that somebody got stabbed with a penknife, and Alan and Leapy Lee, who spent a lot of time at Di's, were jailed, rather surprisingly at the time, were jailed, and that again was this tempestuous life that she'd led, was again rearing its ugly head.
But when, to celebrate Alan's release, Diana bought him a horse, it promptly bolted. Alan broke his back and shoulder in 5 places. In constant pain, his drinking got steadily worse. And then, perhaps in desperation, Alan and Diana converted to Catholicism.
And the service itself was quite wonderful because they were not only received into the church at Wentworth, in a very private, nobody knew about it. I don't think there weren't 8, 10 people in the congregation, if that. Very, very old. Eileen and I think, and about maybe 2 others, as far as I can remember. And then, having been received into the church while we were on the altar, they remarried. And that itself was absolutely wonderful. Dorsey cried, and the priest took her hair and dried her tears with her hair and then wiped the tears with his own face. We all sobbed. We all had a good old cry at the wedding. But that, in fact, was the most wonderful, romantic moment, without any show business razzmatazz. There were no cameras, there were no reporters, there was nobody there. But that again is going back to the private side of Dors.
Ironically, although her last film was one of her best, and she was looking almost as beautiful as in her heyday, she was only doing it for the benefit of the remorseless taxman.
They're closing the place down. The management just told me they're going to close the bars.
What's happening?
The inherited folly of earlier years, when she weaved and ducked to avoid paying income tax, had caught up with Diana, and the cancer had returned. Diana was dying.
I told him I had 123 customers last week. 18 years I've been here. Know more about this place than who comes here and why. The whole of the council put together.
Well, we'll just have to fight them.
Right.
She'd called me 3 or 4 times from the set and was just saying, you know, whatever you do, stay out of this bloody business, because, you know, you get up here at 7 in the morning and it's, you know, cold in the studio, and if I didn't have these bills, I wouldn't have to, to pay. I could come and live in California, and they were ready to sell, everything over there and move over here and just sort of like take her last years, because I think she knew how ill she was, and I think she knew that, she wasn't the indestructible, unsinkable Dors as she once thought of herself as, and it was sad that she wasn't able to get over here and just the last few years just be able to relax and do the things that she wanted, get the sun, and she loved to drop with the sun every now and then.
Diana was only 54 when she died, greatly missed and much loved by her family and friends, even the ones who couldn't be there. Alan had been at her bedside to the end, and already he was contemplating suicide, for both he and Diana had shared one last dark secret.
Well, in fact, Alan had a tumour of the brain for the last 2 years of his life. And when Dors died, that was too much for him. But that's why he killed himself. He'd been treated for cancer of the brain. Now, that is true. And that's what I... But Alan had never known, and you'd think Alan was very outgoing. Never. Dorsey never told us that Alan was ill. But that's why, that certainly hits on the head some of the criticism of Alan killing himself so selfishly. But there was nothing left for him then. He kept going when Dorsey was alive, and Dorsey was helping him through his agony. But that's, in fact, totally true.
Professionally, Diana's career was a rag-bag of minor successes with an important handful of promises, because she could have been a wonderful character actress if she'd lived to play the right parts. She was the first post-war glamour girl of British films, a tonic to the nation. And as a barometer of her times, she was unique. There's never been anyone like her. And because the climate in which she flourished has long gone, there never will be again. Like most of us, she never learned from her mistakes. Unlike most of us, she didn't give a damn for the Mrs. Grundys of this world, and she remained gloriously defiant to the end.
Life, she seemed always to feel, was not a run-through or rehearsal, so you'd better live it right now and get as much out. As long as you don't hurt anybody, do it. Say yes rather than say no. And I think that was the animating spirit of Diana.
It's possible that most of life was a joke to Diana. And that, in total, could be called sad.
She was before her time, There's no question about it. She was before her time. The Profumo era and the Beatles and Albert Finney in that film changed the whole scene completely. But Di had been doing those things that seemed raucous 10 years before. I don't think it would have been noticed so much after 1963.
But how would she like to be remembered? Or, well, I hope what your program has done will be what she would like to be. The very fact that we're talking about her with love and affection. I hope nobody's been horrible or bitchy about her because she didn't deserve that. didn't deserve it. And I miss her. And we all miss her. Those that really knew her miss her. Come back, Dors.
Don't look at me, my darling. I didn't make the rules. All of those who claim love is just a game are comedians or fools. You gotta help it, nurse it, better for worse it. Plus what I said above. But no matter how it is, my darling, it's worth it all.